the food system and food injustice in particular. I don't know if it'll come up again. I'm going to just go right into one of, I think, the most personal and intimate ways, and maybe powerful ways that we participate in the food system, which is by the act of eating in dining halls and associated dining services, in our cafeterias. There are over, and it's in this, in this act where we are intimately connected with the farmers in this country, the small farmers, other farmers abroad, and also with the issues that they represent. And earlier in this class, we've talked about sexual harassment in the strawberry fields, and we talked about the struggle of farmers, fisher folk, and ranchers all over. So we're connected when we eat to those struggles and to those joys. So there are over 4,000 institutions of higher education in this country. Not all of them, but many of them have residential operations and cafeterias. And I think maybe the first thing I would say about college dining is that it is made up of really many wonderful people, many of whom I've got a chance to meet, who really care about the very hard job of feeding students, feeding them safely and beautifully. And I've really found that to be true to all levels of organization, from managers to line cooks. And I think it's, they all deserve our gratitude, and it's a shame that gratitude is not always paid by or repaid by wages which honor that work. So, as you know, I think it's been covered before that 7 of the 10 lowest paying jobs in this country are in food service, and many folks working in the cafeteria represent a disproportionate number of people who are on food stamps themselves or who are food insecure. So we have to recognize that. The other thing I need to say is that food service or dining halls is big business. Here is a look at that and a comparison. Dining services in the country altogether represented about $19 billion in sales. How does that stack up to other things? Well, it's much larger than all but the largest fast food operations. And it takes at $5 billion, schools spend all $5 billion altogether to feed their students by buying food ingredients. So it is big business. The second thing, or the third thing I want to say about college dining is that it exemplifies 2 trends in the food economy that I would highlight right now. The first is an increase in what the Economic Research Service at the USDA calls food away from home. So you can see that this is a chart stretching from 1963 to 2008, and that the percentage of food, the dollars that consumers spend in the economy on establishments, not at home, so not going to the grocery store and preparing at home, has steadily risen. And now, this chart was made, it's pretty much at parity. I raise this to say, first of all, technically that this is what that collection of eateries and cafeterias and stadium food and et cetera is called, in restaurants that's called the food service industry. That's the term I'll use quite frequently. This other thing is to say that if we're going to think about changing the food system, we really have to think also about changing food service. It's not just about, we can't just talk about farmers markets and grocery stores and gardens. Those are important, but we need to have this balance as well. So the other trend that I guess exemplifies is the corporatization and concentration in the food industry. There are 2 ways that universities can operate their dining services. One is by running it themselves, which was more common in the past. The other is by outsourcing it, by having a contract with a company who specializes in that to run it for them. Over time, this practice has grown so that most colleges and universities in the country now outsource their operations, and most of those operations that are outsourced or contracted are run by 3 big companies, Aramark, Compass Group, and Sodexo. And Compass Group operates several subsidiaries. So I'm going very fast, by the way, because usually when we talk about this, we do this, we have several hours of workshops to understand the food economy. So pardon me if it's too fast, but I think I'm getting a little bit of comprehension and off faces. A few nods here and there. We can always go back. Okay, so I'll keep going. So this concentration is a trend. And just to get a sense of these companies, because I think most of us don't really hear about these companies. They're not public or consumer facing like many other ones. We don't really have a good sense of them. But considered globally, as multinational companies that they are enormous. The biggest of them, Compass Group, which is a UK-based group, is with $25.6 billion in revenues globally, is about as big as McDonald's globally. And you know what happens if McDonald's says they want a certain kind of potato. The market moves for McDonald's. So I say this to think this is a really important a lever that we might have to create change down the supply chain. So, let me say, so one of the consequences of this concentration is as follows. And again, this is one of those things that I'm gonna try to do it fast and like simplify it as much as possible, but it's a fairly complicated thing. But let's give it a try. So one of the consequences is the increase in a practice that is in the industry known as volume rebates or volume discounts. We're stepping back away from that for a second. If you think about, what your idea of what, or my idea of what, but before I started this work, what a economic relationship might be, would be the university pays a food company for food which gets delivered to it, right? That does happen. Now, when you throw the corporate food service in the mix, this is what it looks like. And again, this is simpler than we would normally draw it, but it still gets at the idea that now dollars are flowing to a food service company headquarters far away from the local manager. There's someone on site who's running it, and it is then that food service company is working or contracting with big food companies through distributors to acquire food to the university. And what is happening is that those deals are increasingly being sweetened by rebates or discounts. It's the same kind of thing you get if you buy a printer. I always forget to send mine in. I lose $50, and but in this case, they are not forgetting to send it in, and they are paying what, in other terms, would be called a kickback, right? For the privilege of doing business, there is this relationship. What's really important to know right now is that it's not. When we first started, and we learned about this. I think we understood it as a deal sweetener. Increasingly, it is the business. That's because the rebates that come back are almost pure profit. And for the most part, they stay with the food service company. So again, let me give an example. Like Aramark is a food service company. They have a deal with Tyson for chicken, and if they buy a certain amount, they will get a check based on the volume that they buy. And so it's a deal between a company headquarters and and Tyson, and for the most part, though not always, it really stays with the company. It doesn't flow back to the university. Again, there's lots of nuances here, but that's the general rule. And then we should also, let's see if I got this right. Nope. Okay. And then part of the deal with this is that there are preferred vendor status. In exchange for these rebates, it's an exclusive relationship, and at the local level, the managers are really told to comply with that. Maybe 90% of your purchases must come through preferred vendor arrangements like that. So what is this? Why is this important? Well, if you care about mid-sized farmers or small food companies, either in this country or abroad, who are, particularly for mid-sized farmers, who are the ones who are being most squeezed out of the market, you should be very concerned about this, because it is the companies that can pay the biggest rebates, which are getting the most business. And the bigger the companies, the more concentrated the food service corporate companies are, and the more concentrated the food companies are, the vendors, the more this becomes important. So the cycle perpetuates, and I would suggest this is just one of the market structures that Stephen Gleesman talked about that in an earlier lecture that make things difficult for many producers.